founder of VanEck, and I'm here with Tom Palmer, President and CEO of Newmont. How you doing, Tom?
Good, thanks, Joe. Good to see you.
Yes, I'm going to start with the big picture. You've been with Newmont for more than 6 years and have been part of a huge turnaround in strategy and profitability. You took the CEO reins about a year ago. What is your vision for Newmont, and what would you like your legacy to be?
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Newmont in a wonderful position with the two big transactions that we closed out last year. I'm now leading a business that's got a very long life and sustainable portfolio. So my vision is about taking that portfolio and demonstrating Newmont is clearly the leading gold company in the world. And my vision is to do that through a consistency in our strategy that's been there through my whole time at Newmont, and that's around strengthening and improving our ESG leadership. It's about growing our margins and focusing on the discipline around growing margins and growing mine life through our reserve and resource conversion. It's around continuing to optimize our organic project pipeline, and it's about staying disciplined in terms of our capital allocation philosophy and particularly our returns to shareholders. So it's doing those 5 things that underpin our strategy that's supporting our vision. In terms of legacy for my time in the role, I'd see 2 things. On the objective side, we have a fantastic early stage organic pipeline. We've got some very large projects sitting at pre-feasibility study phase. In my time in the role, I see my job as optimizing and understanding and sequencing those projects so that I'm positioning Newmont beyond this decade with those projects that can really maintain our production profile, our cash generating potential through the 2030s and 2040s. I think that's a key task for me in my time in the role. The other one, more subjective, is that my measure of a good leader is when they leave an organization and you look back and you can see the systems and the people, the talent that they've developed staying well beyond their time. And a key measure for me is that I look at the talent that I develop within the Newmont business, a successor for my role, but more importantly, those next generation or 2 generations of leaders that we are developing in Newmont, and that I leave an organization that is very healthy in terms of that talent pool.
Okay. Yes. Thanks for that. I'm going to talk about something that's on everybody's mind these days, the COVID pandemic. Newmont, as well as the entire sector, has done a remarkable job of managing the pandemic. Will your experience with lockdowns and travel restrictions cause you to change the way you operate in the future?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think the mining industry in general has done a fantastic job in responding to this pandemic, particularly about how we've managed our operations and workforce, but also how we've supported the local communities in around our operations. I think the industry's got a lot to be thankful for. We've learned a lot, and our organisation will not be the same as it was before the pandemic came along. We've basically gone through a massive pilot exercise, something you would never have attempted to do without the pandemic, and it's challenged. And with 30 years in mining, it's challenged some of my paradigms about where and how work gets done. We moved early on in the pandemic, some 10,000 people off our mine sites and offices around the world in order to be able to effectively manage the risk of the infection spreading. And in most instances, they haven't come back to those places of work yet. So we're demonstrating that we can sustainably do work differently than we did before, leveraging technology, the opportunity to not have certain roles on sites all of the time, or to have certain job support multiple sites. The key one for me, though, is how technology supported this different way of working. And for us, it's accelerated the application of technology in a couple of key areas, but one is around operation support hubs that we were setting up in both Denver and Perth, so we can follow the sun with these support hubs, with these centres that are monitoring asset health around our mines globally and processing plant performance around our mines globally, and having our key experts monitoring and supporting those mine sites. So if I think about asset health It's around component life of equipment or engine condition, and be able to extend component life or pull out engines before they fail. Or in the processing plant, it's about monitoring where the constraint is and working with the control rooms on those operating sites to manage and work those constraints to maximize throughput and recovery. We've accelerated our move into that application of technology with the principle that with 12 operating sites, the whole is worth more than the sum of the individual sites. So we're looking to use technology to leverage our global scale to improve all of our operating sites. I see us doing more of that work on the back of this experience and accelerating that implementation of technology.
Mm-hmm. Are there areas that are more difficult, or that where you can't function as you would like because of the restrictions?
We haven't experienced that yet. I would say the challenge is more around the impacts on the operating sites in terms of keeping the discipline around those protocols. So it's around the additional accommodation you need to put in to be able to manage social distancing and separation. It's the screening of people coming on and off our sites. It's the additional cleaning regimes. For instance, before you can change an operator out of a cabin of a truck, you've got to do a clean of that cabin. So you've got more about those constraints that are impacting your productivity that we need to continue to work on. But in terms of getting our work done, we've found workarounds. So a great example is with our big tailings facilities, we have independent technical review boards that come onto the site for a week, once a year, independent geotechnical engineers to assess how we're operating and maintaining those facilities. We've been able to conduct those reviews completely virtually, using drones, using video conferencing, using data that's available and we can share. And we've been able to do that very important work virtually, whereas traditionally you'd have those people on site. So we're finding ways to work around the constraints.
Yeah, okay. So I want to talk about various aspects of your operations now. In past cycles, costs have risen with gold prices, and investors haven't seen the margin expansion or returns they expected. So far in this cycle, margins have expanded nicely as the industry has been very disciplined. Do you see capital or operating cost inflation creeping back for Newmont?
Joe, is similar experience. We're not seeing those typical input costs escalating. We're certainly not seeing that in wages at this point in time. We put a lot of effort into maintaining the integrity of our workforce. We put a lot of effort into the leader team member relationship. We have a philosophy that people will join a company and leave a leader. So for me, I watch our voluntary attrition rates to see whether we're seeing any escalation in those, which is a leading indicator as to where you might have wage escalation. Not seeing that. We are seeing the cost impacts that come from managing the protocols around COVID. Certainly seeing those in the short term, and as this pandemic progresses, just how long they might have to stay within our business. So certainly watching that carefully. But I'm seeing a lot more discipline in our industry and in our company this time around. So the discipline around $1,200 gold, managing our business at the bottom of the price cycle, and not seeing some of the sins of the last bull run in gold playing out. One of the couple of key changes that we made back in 2012-13, one was what I call separating church and state. Our resource models are governed independently by my technical team. I've got a chief technical officer who reports to me, sits on our executive team. He has a team who manage our resource models, who determine the reserves that go into those resource models, and then our operators then build mine plans to those resource models. That same team then governs those mine plans to make sure that they are able to be that they're achievable. So that's a very important change from last time round. The other key one is our investment system. That any investment has to navigate through our investment system and pass checkpoints and demonstrate that we're meeting return rates before it can proceed to the next step. That discipline still remains. So I think there are some important things that are different from last time round that will help maintain our margins and help us focus on improving those margins.
Mm-hmm. And I think in the past, companies have generally used the 3-year trailing average gold price to calculate their reserve and resources. What do you see going forward? What would you need to see in order for you to increase your price assumptions?
Yeah, we that is part of our. I mean, the SEC requires us to do that as well, but we then have our own standards above that. I look at running our business at the bottom of the price cycle, and for me, for the foreseeable future, the $1,200 represents the bottom of the price cycle. I've grown up in mining communities. I've seen the impact of on families and communities of companies not managing to the bottom of the price cycle in a cyclical industry. So for me, it's about holding that discipline at the bottom of the price cycle for the setting of reserves, but then understanding your sensitivity to different prices. So, for instance, at Newmont, $1,300 gold is about a 5% increase in reserves. So we understand what that sensitivity is, maintain the discipline at 1,200. We're in the middle of our planning process at the moment. We run a whole bunch of scenarios. We run downside scenarios. So what would the world look like at 1,100 or 1,000? Then we look at 1,400, 1,600, 1,800. So we understand the sensitivity around that whilst maintaining that $1,200. And then we'll make decisions. We made decisions at Yanacocha to do some higher cost laybacks at Quecher Main to allow us to bridge the oxides to the sulfides. We're looking at Cripple Creek and Victor, where we might do some higher cost laybacks to bridge from the open pit to the underground potential of that mine. So we make some very deliberate decisions around that discipline of $1,200. And I wouldn't see us changing that anytime soon with that rigor and approach to how we manage our business.
Yeah. Okay. Something you alluded to in the very first question, you have several mega projects in your portfolio that have been around for a long time due to high capital requirements or technical risks. A higher gold price obviously helps these projects, but are there other factors that will enable some of these projects to move forward?
Yeah, certainly the higher prices help. The important thing with those big projects, though, is to do the ability to influence the value of those projects and the success of their implementation is to ensure you do that early stage, particularly the pre-feasibility study work. So there's two things that I'd say we're doing to optimize those projects at that stage of study. The first is that we have a strategic mine planning capability we call strategic resource development that we're applying to those projects. And that's about, too often those projects try and move too quickly to lock down scope, particularly around processing infrastructure and the like, without understanding what the ore body is telling you. So we're spending time at this stage of those studies to do the strategic resource development work to understand what the potential is in that ore body, and are there some lower capital cost ways to develop that ore body to bring it online. So now's at the pre-feasibility study phase is the time to do that work, which is what we're doing. The other one is doing implementing projects like autonomous haulage at Boddington, which has a business case at Boddington to move to a fully autonomous mine, but it provides then a base case to put into those big projects to improve their economics. So there's things we're doing in implementing technology at one end of the scale whilst we do that study work. Our approach will be to only ever implement one of those mega projects at any one time. Our production profile does not need the first of those projects until the very end of this decade. So now's the time to optimize them, get a competition for capital going between those projects, and determine which of those projects are the first to come through with that time frame in mind, with the real focus on optimizing them and holding them in that pre-feasibility study phase until we understand which has got the best potential and how best do we de-risk the implementation of those projects. One last one with them, Joe, is I think they're big. They are joint ventures currently, and I think those big projects will be joint ventures going forward. And so it's about that ability to work with a partner to bring those projects forward. And I think that with those very large projects will be part of the mining industry going forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, in the time we have left, I'd like to talk a little bit about ESG, which has become a huge force in the investment community. It's apparent that ESG is very much a part of the culture at Newmont. How has Newmont evolved in this space in the time that you have been with the company?
Thanks, Joe. And ESG is very much part of the DNA of Newmont. And it goes back to, when you can trace it back over 30 years, when Newmont left the shores of the US and went simultaneously into Peru, while the Shining Path was still in control, in Indonesia with the Suharto regime, and Uzbekistan shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union. And we learned some pretty hard lessons from going pretty fast simultaneously. And that's been built into our DNA, and it's informed how we manage our ESG. And the key one for me in my time is how we've continued to strengthen the governance component of ESG. And the G actually should be at the front, in my opinion. Unless you've got good, robust governance, you will not get sustainable environmental and social performance. And good governance for me is an independent board with a non-executive chair, and then some robust committees that hold management to account for our performance. You know, I think about in my time in the role, our Safety and Sustainability Committee, which is not required, but has been in place for many, many years, is chaired by an industry authority, not a mining person. Jane Nelson's a key leader in the global community around social responsibility. And to have someone like that leading a committee that is holding us to account for how we perform in the safety and sustainability area is a key component of Newmont's DNA. The other one for me, in my experience, has been the attention that the board place on leadership development and succession. And I'm a product of that. The move from Gary Goldberg to me in the CEO role was a process where the board for about 4 years took me through a process of assessing my ability to do the role, and a key component of that was demonstrated performance around environmental and social performance. So it's a key part of our succession planning, which I think makes it part of our DNA, is the governance component of ESG at Newmont.
And, you know, when I think of mining, the first thing that comes to mind is, 200-ton haul trucks burning lots of diesel. How do you see the industry in the next 10 to 20 years? Will mining be the part of the problem or part of the solution for climate change?
I think mining absolutely has to be part of the solution for climate change, because we provide a lot of the metals that are going to be needed for that energy transition in the world. I think there will be those companies that take ESG performance seriously, carbon intensity seriously, and are looking to improve, and those companies that don't. And I think this will be a decade where there'll be a bifurcation within the industry, and there'll be companies that are around and performing very well in 10 years' time, and there'll be companies that chose not to go down that path that won't be with us because they won't have shareholders supporting them. So I think we have to be part of this solution because of the products we produce are part of this solution. And I think mining have a lot to offer in terms of improving carbon intensity, greenhouse gas emissions, and there are things that we can do to come down that carbon intensity curve as an industry to support the globe in the work we have to do.
Yeah. Well, I think we're about out of time. I want to thank you, Tom, for joining the interview tonight. It's been a pleasure, and we'll turn it back to Mines and Money and go on from here.
Great. Thanks, Joe.